Hey guys, this is Tolly and welcome to Let's Build a JRPG Part 18. The number's getting pretty high now. Back again this morning. Yesterday we were on for Part 17. We mostly spent a lot of time playing around with the background for the game. What did we do? We also kind of got a basic dungeon kind of set up. Honestly, fun stuff to play with, but I kind of want to focus today not so much on like just art building, but actually getting some more work done on the combat scene. I feel like we're getting real close to having like a real playable prototype. There's a couple missing pieces. Let's call those out now. So we got to do health UI, I think, for the characters. I'm thinking of sticking it behind them from where they're currently standing. I think that means we need to move these characters up slightly in order to make room. I think this is in reverse order. So character 1 needs to move forward a bit. And then probably character 2 as well. And that should hopefully give enough space. We can worry about giving them exact positions in a later point. So this one's 3.25 and the other one's 3.5. So 3.25 and 3.5. Okay, and then, yeah, we need the UI in behind to let you know how much health you have. We should probably also hook up the concept of like SP, some skill points. I'm also still debating whether or not we have, this is more of a design decision, but the question of whether or not we will have different like health pools and skill point pools for different characters, or for the pairings, because we're trying to build this concept of like there's the hero and the hero's companion, and you swap back and forth depending on which ability you use, whether it's the companion's ability or the hero's ability. But I'm not sure whether or not they should have a shared health pool or a individual health pool. But I think for now we'll build individual, and if we don't like it, we can always try and simplify it down. Other things that are a problem that I'm aware of is that currently when a character dies on the bottom turn order track, they don't get removed. So if we kill one of these golems, they get stuck because it thinks it's that AI golem's turn. We try and push that AI golem to take a turn, but it's dead, so it won't take a turn, and so then the game just stops. This is a problem I introduced when I added the turn manager recently. So I still have to resolve that in order to really be able to play. And that's probably a good place to start. The health UI would be an interesting thing to do as well. We'll probably get to that, but let's see if we can fix the fact that when a character dies, they're not removed from the turn order. The problem with this task is require a little bit of thinking, and thinking, it's hard. Let's take a look at how the turn order stuff works. While I do this, I also wanted to mention in the last stream I started off with kind of just opening up source tree and kind of just showing like what I had done off camera, because we're starting to get into a point where like I'm starting to do a bunch of work that isn't necessarily being shown. And I'm kind of, in the last stream I was like, oh, I'll just show you exactly what I worked on last time and use this as a guide, using the commits as a reference for what I've done. I think I'm probably going to avoid doing that. I'll probably try and discuss as I kind of play through if there's stuff that I've done off camera, kind of talk to it a little bit, but I'm not going to go open up source tree, and I'm also not going to dig too deep into things that I do off camera. If you guys want to know about like how I implemented the controller system so that I can move the cursor using WAC instead of having to click on the buttons, like building a controller support and building this turn-based system, if you want more detail on some of these things, be sure to ask. I'm more than willing to dive into them, but if no one's really interested, then I'm just going to keep moving forward with making forward progress. Okay, so the way the turn system worked, I set it up so that basically there's the concept of a class called a turn round. You can pass in a list of ATB units. This needs to get refactored out as well. I want to clean this up because ATB is from the previous system. We don't have action time bars, now it's just turns. But we pass in the list of units and we add them to the turn order. There should also be a little bit more work right now. It's just adding them based off the order they were loaded into the game, essentially. That's the turn order, but there should be something based off the unit's speed where we calculate the turns. So that'll have to go here. We really want some level of randomization here. And then we added the ability to get the first unit, and then also we can tell whether or not the round's complete when the turn order is 0. Because when we get a unit, we also remove that unit from the turn order. And that's pretty much all the turn round is. Saying that aloud, I realize it's a terrible name. Much to be refactored as we move forward. But I was more interested in just getting the turn order up and running when I built this, so I do fundamentally agree that there's some issues with the way it's been designed. I don't honestly like the fact that it's in the combat character manager. I feel like it should be in its own singleton in charge of turn order, some sort of turn manager. But the combat character manager is kind of my catch-all dump place where I dump stuff that I will eventually want to refactor. Which is kind of nice because I can come in here and go, oh, it's kind of awful that like this UI related thing is in here. Probably should be in a separate manager, and I can kind of just take a day and refactor some of this stuff later. But for now, let's leave it broken, or somewhat. It's not broken, it's just unideal. In its unideal state, let's leave it, and let's figure out how we're going to update these turn orders when a unit dies. So how do we know when a unit dies? I believe we have some sort of death state that we apply. In general, this is still less than ideal. In general, the death stuff has not worked exactly how I would like. So we add a stat, which is the knockout stat. Okay. So the way the system currently works is we have set it up so that the status which is just a class that basically handles this system. But so the status will add a knockout status effect if the stat comparison, based off of stat comparisons, and that stat comparison inits to HP 0 is equal to. Okay, so if the HP is equal to 0, then we add the knockout status. And it does also look like this thing will auto remove that status if the HP goes back above. How does it add it in the first place? Some of this stuff is still from Liquid Fire Blog's stuff, and I haven't spent enough time. Well, I learned all of it a long time ago. Like some of the stuff we set up a while back, and I haven't had to dig into it as much, so I'm having to refamiliarize myself with how the system even works. I guess I could rely on the fact that this thing magically adds a status, but I kind of want to understand how the code we're using works. And I used to. I've just forgotten. I see. Okay. I get it. Cool. Got it. This is actually where we're adding the knockout status effect, but when we add it, we also add a thing that says that my HP must be equal to 0. And if it's ever not equal to 0, if the condition is not true anymore, then remove it. Okay, cool. That makes sense. So we add it when HP equals to 0, but if HP is ever not 0, we remove it. That's what this code is doing. All right, so it works the way I thought it did, but now I've confirmed it to myself. So now let's say if the status effect gets added, is this also where we should do this? No, because this is the auto status controller. So this thing might want to do a bunch of different auto statuses that isn't just knockout. So do we want knockout to be in charge of this? What does this do? Right now on awake, it will try and fade the enemy to death. This doesn't happen anymore because they're no longer... This was based off of when we had the game in 3D. And what we would essentially do would be that we would set up a easing control to have it so that the character would fade below the ground, which is written down here on fade death. And so we would translate them down slightly on death. But that doesn't work anymore, because the reason that worked was because the 3D model would fade below the ground, because we had a ground plane and the enemy would go below it, and so that was a cool death animation. But now that doesn't happen. How do we want to have... okay, so before we even fix the turn order thing, we should probably fix this. Just running into problems. Let's try, instead of owner.transform, owner is the unit. Okay. We also get status, and we also get the animator. We actually want two different versions, I think. I think we want that when a character dies to just play an animation of them dying and leave them fainted on the ground. But for enemies, I think we want them to fade away. Because we can revive our heroes, but I don't think we want reviving enemies. So we actually want this to work differently. And I think this fade was built with me thinking about the enemies, but not about the heroes. Okay. So we'll probably want to grab the unit's alliance then, which holds whether or not it's a hero or an enemy. Okay, so then this sets up the ease controller. On event on complete. And then on update, I assume we call update event? Or do we start this immediately? Where do we start the EC? EC.play. So we play a death animation on the characters. And then if that death animation needs a trigger, that at a certain point we want to fade them away. We don't have any animations right now. So where do we call play on that animation? On enable, we set trigger die. This is no longer happening because the animator doesn't have a death. Okay, so for the time being, we're going to comment this out, and we're going to say that we instead just call ec.play. Until we get animations, we'll just skip that step, but we'll leave this commented out, and you know what we should probably add it to do. once death animations are added, remove this line. Okay, so then this won't be needed because we're going to just call play here. Were we doing anything else? We would set the Y position, but we're not going to do the Y position fade off anymore because we don't have a ground to push them below. So this neat little trick doesn't work in 2D. So instead, all of this fade stuff I think is still valuable, but on the update loop on death fade, instead of doing a Y position work, let's do something else. Can we fade a unit? Let's hit play and see if there's a way to manipulate the sprites to fade them off. I doubt that we can, because I think the sprites are all separate pieces, or can be all separate pieces. For the knight is one sprite renderer, which we could change his alpha to fade him away. Hey Kazukish, welcome to the stream. Good morning to you. Oh, nice. I was curious if anyone is actually watching the VODs. It's cool to know that people are. Because I feel like yesterday's VOD was me just messing with tile maps for like 3 hours. And I'm not entirely sure whether or not that's interesting content. But if I'm going to, I don't know. I'm at a point now where I'm just going to stream, and then if people watch it, they watch it. But it's good to know that you watched it. Thank you for that. Okay. Mild self-consciousness moment over. Now, I can fade off the knight because he is this object, and he is one image. So we could do a fade for now, which eventually we might want to replace with like some sort of like particle death of some kind. Like maybe he fades away on death, and then I don't know, something cool. I might have to look into some shaders to actually like make him disappear. But for this one here, for this guy, which is a more better representation of what our units will be like, because this one was a concept that Trixie made for me to kind of put into the game for the hero, but this is not the final asset for the hero. The golem is more representative of what we think a final asset will be like, and a final asset will be made of several parts that will be animated. So I think the question is, can we group fade a bunch of sprite renderers? And ideally, I don't want to grab every sprite renderer and like fade their alpha down, although I could. The question is, can I do a grouping? Can I, let's see, fade sprite renderer group. Apply color alpha to multiple sprites. This is the exact problem. He's made of several pieces. Oh, interesting. This brings up an interesting problem, which I hadn't thought about. It doesn't work. Since I still have the problem of overlapping. If I change the material of those sprites, everyone will be rendered individually with X alpha. I want to apply some sort of effect on the whole group, like how the canvas group works. Yeah, which is what I'm looking for as well, is that if you have a canvas object, so let's go into action panel to show this. If we add a canvas group to this, canvas group has an alpha setting on it that allows you to fade everything at once. Even though these are all a bunch of different individual pieces, they're all fading. But if we faded this one individually by itself, the problem he's discussing in that section is that you would have it show the background. So for here, if we fade the shoulder piece individually, not as like a group, let's see. Oh god, what was this naming scheme again? Left A, left arm? Yeah, left arm, right arm. So left arm 1 should be the, I'm not sure which one is 1. That's his foot. Okay, left arm 3 is the shoulder. Oh, I want right arm because it's from his perspective. Yeah, so when we fade this, you get to see that dark line on the body that normally is completely covered. So if we fade them all individually at the same time, you'll get to see some weird artifacting as you see pieces that are behind other pieces. So we don't want to fade them all like that. We want something more like this, where it all fades it as one chunk, basically. So if we bring back up that page... I know this is an old question, but if anyone's still looking for something like this, I've wrote a script and posted it here with an explanation of the kind of things it can do at the bottom of the post. The animator I worked with needs to be able to edit groups of sprites in an editor, but I have the function. Okay, let's take a look at your thing. Sprite group. Interesting. I don't know if I really want to grab from someone else. This seems a little too... I was hoping for an answer, not someone else's custom script. Yeah, these are people asking different problems. This looks like a blog post. This is a rabbit hole I didn't intend to go down. Yeah, this doesn't solve our problem. This is just someone who didn't like the fact that he couldn't just call fade on a sprite, so he built his own thing that embeds the... Okay, later, Kazukish. Thanks for jumping in. Or, I guess you might still be lurking around, you're saying, but yeah. Have fun in Tabletop Sim. Tabletop Sim is awesome. I don't think we're going to find an answer for this. So I think we're going to leave it alone for now. I am kind of curious to see what this script looks like. Oh wow, it's literally right here. What did he actually do? Sorry, I'm like a dog with a bone now. I found a problem and I'm curious. Update. Updating. Color is equal to sprite group color. This still doesn't look like it solves the problem that the person mentioned, though, actually. Because how do you keep them from fading over top of each other with this? Yeah, this looks like this script is just grouping them all and updating all of their colors simultaneously. But it's still not going to fix some artifacts showing up, like if I was to fade his shoulder. Because it would just be finding them all and doing the fade. Okay. Interesting. I think shaders are the correct answer here. I think it's finding a way... Sprite skin? Nope. Material. Let's take a quick look at what happens if we replace sprite default. Let's go to... Now we're experimenting, seeing what we can find. So let's close the store assets. Let's open up here. Put this in... Just make a new folder. It's just a testing folder. I don't want to dump it anywhere else. I don't want to be able to clean this up at a later point. Let's make a material. Let's name it 2D fade test. Let's go to all of the materials and give it 2D test. It breaks fundamentally. Okay. This needs to be sprite default, it looks like. So we want this to be not standard, but sprite default. Okay. Now, if we replace all of this with sprite default, he renders the same down here. Okay. But now we have 2D fade test. And if we go to tint, so yeah, we can fade him all together, but we still see the same problem. You can see his shoulder appear in the background. The other problem we run into is by doing this via shaders. I think that if we apply the exact same name shader to a different one or to all of them and then do the fade, they all fade. So each one would need to have its own material, which is not undoable. You can create materials at runtime to do that. But we kind of want to like group render these is like... Maybe that's a better question. Group render sprite Unity. Yeah, again, this is for sorting, but it doesn't solve... We've run into this before, and this is a solvable thing. You can use sorting group to make it so you don't get any kind of weird layering issues with sprites, like eyes showing up in front of other like pieces. But like, how do we actually... No one answered that question, but that's the same question we're asking. Yeah, a lot of people are talking about the sorting problem, which makes sense. Group render sprites Unity fade. This is real coding now. Yeah, sounds like we need to do shader work to fix this. Okay. Okay, it's not an easy solvable problem in this stream. It's going to require me to learn more stuff. So, my quick and easy fix of... The reason we got here was that I was trying to find a quick and easy fix for fading the enemies off. Now, I still can, by doing something like this. We could grab all of the sprite renders as well for each one and fade them all together. So we could grab every single one of the pieces and fade them. Feels clunky. The other option is we turn off the character. I mean, it's not elegant, but this fade wouldn't be the end solution anyways. So why spend a bunch of time, or spend more time, I should say, trying to figure out how to fade these things when we could just turn them off to say they're dead. Just remove them from the battlefield by turning them off. At which point we don't need any kind of animation at all. The system would just be to turn this object off. The problem with that idea is by turning the object off, if we just turn the object off, then the scripts won't update. So we do need to turn off the individual pieces. So even though we're not going to do a fade, I think I'm still going to get the sprite renderers. Get components. Need an S in here. In children. Sprite renderers. It's being somewhat pedantic about typing. How do you initialize an array again? God, I use lists so much more. Fine, do that. I don't even think we need to initialize it because we're going to be setting it here. Yeah, you know what? That looks dumb. So we're just going to do that. And then here, I will make this a function, so I'm not just embedding a huge line of code. For each sprite renderer that we found, in the sprites, dot enabled equals false. So when we kill a thing, it disappears. It's not elegant, it's not polished, but it informs the user what's happened, which we're trying to get to a prototype of combat, and right now what's most important is just communication. As long as we can communicate to the user what happened, I'm fine with it. This can have a lot of bugs, but I'm going to be lazy and just toggle the sprites on and off. I believe on disable, we should call this, so this is when it gets removed. Are we going to call on disable on remove? Not sure if Unity does that. I guess we'll find out. I don't think we have a way in our system right now to revive someone anyways, so we might have to come back and fix that later. Now, on death, a unit will disappear. Also on death, we need to update the turn order, which is what originally led us down this rabbit hole. How... It feels awful to me that all of this stuff is happening in the knocked out status effect. Like, we do so much thing in this, so much stuff in the status effect. I feel like there should be like an on death notification instead. Maybe that is the right call. Let's send a death animation notification. And we're overriding the sender to be the unit that sent this. Okay. Then let's go to... I'm still fine doing the toggle here, but I would like to try and find a better way. But for the sake of trying to improve at least a little bit, we don't use any notifications currently in the combat character manager. What is a manager I can look at that does use notifications? As soon as Unity stops messing around. Okay, let's check the elemental manager. I feel like we did some post notification stuff here. Somewhat, but a little bit different from what I was looking for. Victory manager. Auto status controller. Here we go. Yeah, I like this. Okay, so when a unit dies, we will apply the knocked out status effect. And on enable of that status effect, we will post a death notification. At which point, we will notify the combat character manager. This is again code that should eventually go to a turn order manager, which I'll leave a to-do for myself, because I search for these and then make tasks out of them at a later point. Okay, now on death notified, the sender will be a unit, because we're overriding it to be one. So we know this unit has died. Cool. What do we do with that? We need to remove that unit from the list of ATB units, if it's in there. So we need to do dot remove unit dot get. You know what? Let's fix this. This is another stupid thing. I'm gonna just, instead of being a list of ATB units, this will be a list of units for turn order. And the better way to do this is to do right click, rename, because this will just rename it everywhere. Units for turn order. Don't love the name, but we're moving. Okay, now units for turn order usually sets the ATB of the unit. this result. It's a game object. We want to get the unit instead. Is there anywhere else where that matters? Check the error list. It doesn't like the conversion here, right? Because this is now expecting a list of ATB units. Which now we don't have to go get the component. Yeah. I'll remove the ATP class at a later point, but for now, let's at least get it out of here, because it's causing me to have to do things in a silly way. All right, so now we have a list of units for turn order, which is a better name. And the reason we need a different list of turn order units opposed to normal units is that the companions don't get added to the turn order. The hero goes, and when the hero goes, you can choose to do a companion's attack or the hero's attack, but they don't need to be in the turn order together. The hero is the turn order for the both of them. All right, so we remove the unit from here, but we also need to grab the current round and the next round. And we need to remove that unit from those lists as well. I think. So we'll need to add a remove. Oh, did I grab the views? Yeah. This class should probably be in its own space too. This is another thing that I'd like to fix at some point. Public void remove unit from the turn order. And then this should take a unit to remove. And we just do turn order dot remove unit. And then for the current unit or current round, we remove and for the next turn we remove. We will need to add something that adds the unit back on revive, but I need to just in general, like, I'll do all of that when we add a revive ability. When we add something that can revive units like a Phoenix Down or something, I will go about adding that logic. For now, we're mostly concerned about just removing units when they die. What was the complaint? Oh, we didn't save all files. Is that what it was? Yeah, that was the problem. We hadn't saved everything. And I think that should do it, right? Because we are posting that notification. Yep. And the comment manager is listening for it. And we remove that unit. Okay. So if we kill one of these golems by hitting it enough, we should see two things. Number one, we should see it disappear from the screen, and we should see it disappear from the turn order on the bottom. And we did. He disappeared, and he disappeared down here. But he didn't disappear from over here. because we don't update this UI every frame. We also need to update the UI when we do this, which is interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. We have to update the views because we've modified it, so we have to update it. Normally we might want to make this automatic too. We might want to do something that actually listens for when these change, and when they change to call update or post a notification. More events. More events. I think that does have a performance impact for using events instead of direct calls. If we can do direct calls, we probably should. We don't always have access to the objects that we need to call on, so posting the events is sometimes easier. It's always a trade-off between performance and memory. That is the constant trade-off. Okay, remove from both. Why did the fire guy get removed from the turn order? Right? The fire guy should still be on the second turn. Interesting. Interesting. Welcome to the stream, Louis DJ XD. Louis? I don't know. Welcome, new face. At least a name I don't recognize. How's it going? You having a good morning? Enjoying the day? Okay. Yeah, when that unit died, red got removed as well. Why is red getting removed from the second turn? It almost looks like we're updating it with the wrong list. Let's see what happens when we flip. Okay, red is here. Interesting. So it does look like the turn order... Update view. Interesting. I guess we're going to have to debug it. I'm not seeing any immediate problems, so I'm going to have to go in and actually look at the code. But we're basically there. We got the units disappearing and we got them removing from the turn order. That's a help. That's a help. We are going to run into a problem. Oh, God. So because we have the companions running on the same turn as the hero, if the hero dies, we will need to add the companion to the turn order queue as he's now in charge. There's going to be some special logic around that. Lots of special logic around the companion mechanic. But that's fine. We'll tackle that after. I'm more concerned about getting the golems, the enemy golems, disappearing. Okay. Let's kill one of these targets. And then after we get this working, I think I want to add the health stats behind the heroes. I think that's also going to be valuable, being able to see those pieces of information. Okay, it's a Death Knight unit. Cool, that's the one that we attacked and killed. We are removing them from the turn order. So now the turn order has Knight, Wizard, Barbarian, Archer, Cactus Man, Ghost. Yep, 4 heroes and 2 monsters. We are going to remove it from the next round. Turn order. Had Knight, Wizard, Barbarian. Yep, okay. That looks correct. Okay, let's take a look here. So we have... Next round has a turn order of Knight, Wizard, Barbarian, Archer. Okay, so it shows the correct information. And the current round has a turn order of 2, which is just the last 2, the Cactus and the Ghost, to go. We're going to update the current round. We destroy all of the images. Well, that's a bug. We weren't clearing the list after we nuked all of the previous images on the bottom bar. I don't think that's the bug that we're seeing, but I'm going to check against it anyways. Let's start again. Maybe somehow that was causing the issue, but I can't imagine it would be. We just used that list for destroying the objects, and if there's bad memory in that list, it's not going to be the biggest deal. I can't see how it would cause the current bug we're seeing. Yep, still seeing it. All right. Interesting. Super interesting. Why would it remove that unit? We saw when we tested the first time that the lists are correct. We're going to have to debug through the actual view and see. We're going to have to look at what we're passing into the view and how we're generating it. I feel like I'm missing something obvious and I'm just not seeing it. Okay, so we kill this one. Okay, so from current turn order, we are removing the Death Knight. It is removed. From the current round, we are removing the Death Knight. Now it is just Wizard, Barbarian, Archer, Cactus Man, which makes sense because for the current round, the Knight has been dealt with. Okay. Now we remove the Knight from the next round, which we're already missing the Knight. Which means before we get the death notification, we're removing the Knight from the next round's list. Well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So it's probably not happening here. Is this a bug that was happening all along, but we just didn't notice it until we were really paying attention to the bottom bar, maybe? So yeah, the data is incorrect. Next round should have the Knight in it, but it doesn't. And it was happening before we called remove. So somewhere else where we update the round, it's broken. Next round. Gets generated at the start of the game, or at the start of the match. And it gets generated when the round is complete. Otherwise, it's never touched. Okay. Unless there's a reference. Okay. I have an idea on what could be happening. There is a point after the first round where we set the current round to the next round. And I'm wondering if when we do that, we end up stomping it in such a way. Okay, it has the knight. We're removing a ghost. Okay, still correct. Next round looks correct to me. Still looks correct. It is. Okay. So it doesn't have to do with the unit's death. It's this section here that we're causing a problem, I think. When we do current round, we've gotten the knight out of the current round. We also removed it from the next round. Somehow, when we call current round get first, we are also removing it from the next. And that's, I think, because of this. We're setting them equal to each other. We need to do a deep copy, because this is setting it by reference. So now current round and next round are the same thing. But what I actually want to do... I'm going to have to write a function. What a terrible small bug. We can't do this set. If we set them directly to each other, then they become connected. Welcome Alex G. Will to the YouTube side of things. Hope you're having a good morning. Welcome to me trying to solve code bugs. Working on the JRPG this morning. Not here. Here. Now, instead of directly setting the current round to the next round, which effectively makes them the exact same object, which is what's causing the problem, we instead are going to copy the next round, which instead of setting it to it, we take it in And we don't even set our turn orders the same because we don't want to run into a problem where the turn orders are the same object. Instead, we're just going to copy it over. Reference versus setting deep copy is always a pain. It works so well set by reference most of the time, but every so often Unity gets me. I think setting the lists would be okay. Like if I didn't do a for each there, and if I just did turn order is equal to turn order, I think it would work. But I'm not going to risk it. Yeah, that was a bug with my turn system. It didn't have anything to do with removing the unit after death. It was just a problem with basically setting the next round. Yeah. It was happening even before the fire guy attacked. I just didn't notice. Okay. But now it's working, so the next round is now a proper next round. They're not interacting between each other. Okay. And the original point of the start of today was to get it so that when a unit died, it disappeared from the map and it disappeared from the turn order. And we've done that. One of the gray cubes, which represents one of the enemies, has disappeared from the turn order. Okay. Cool. Now, moving right along, because there's never a shortage of things to do, let's take a look at the health. Let's see if we can do something where we show the health of the heroes here. How do we want to do that? How do we want to do that? Let's start from scratch. I'm debating whether or not I want to copy something, but I think I want to... what do I want to do? Let's make a panel. We're going to make a panel. That panel is going to use... It's going to be too hard to find it that way. It's going to use box 2. We'll find it this way. Move it up in the hierarchy. The box does not need to be the entire size of the screen. It needs to sit behind the heroes. The thickness of the outer line is too big too. We can thin that. See how that looks. Let's just kind of get some positioning. Let's make it full transparency so it's easier to see. Let's do window in window so that we can kind of see what we're editing a little bit easier. So we're going to need to fit a health bar, a skill points bar, and then probably a health bar and a skill points bar for the companion. I can't... Well, we might want to hit names in here as well. That's kind of polishy, though. That's a little fluffy. I don't think we need that. Let's go to one of these so we can see the actual height. Let's go 225. That seems like a better number. And height, let's go 150. Can we get away with 150? And then the next question is sticking these together in such a way that we have one for each enemy, or each hero. Let's create an empty object. Let's put these panels under that empty object. Okay. Let's do a vertical layout group. Let's add 2 more panels. It's just the vertical layout group just allows us to better visualize what we're going to end up with. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Well, we're covering the bottom ones, which is less than ideal. But we don't have to necessarily have these be that wide. That seems fine-ish. Seems fine-ish. And then inside one of these things, like I said, we're going to need a progress bar. Which doesn't need to be very tall. And we're going to need a piece of text to represent the HP amount as well, because we want written versions of this, I think. Let's see, can we get away with, say, font size 12? That's what the actual size will be. Yeah, we probably can get away with 12 to start. So something like HP 30 out of 30, for example. Okay, and then we're going to need 4 of these. We're going to need one for the SP of the hero, one for the HP of the companion, and one for the SP of the companion. So busy. So much information. It's overwhelming amounts of data. I can't think about UX right now. I can't just be like overwhelmingly trying to make the perfect UI, because we don't even know what all the UI we need is yet. So we need to just build with the extreme amount of information, and then once we figure out all the stuff we need to have on the screen, then we'll scale it back down to just what bare minimum a user needs. But right now we don't know what the bare minimum is, so we're just going to add as much as we can to make it at least understandable. Because if there's no information, then you're not going to know how to play at all, ever. But at least if there's too much information, it might take time to parse it, but you might be able to figure it out. Okay, so that looks fine to me. Now we're in play mode, so if we stopped right now, all of this would disappear because changes don't save in play mode. But we'll use the prefab trick. So we're going to drag this object into this here section so that we get this game object. We'll hit stop, and then we'll drag the prefab back out. And look, there's all my changes. Okay. I do want to unpack prefab completely and delete the original prefab, because we don't need it to be a prefab. And then this is going to be HP, or I guess it's like unit status is a better kind of global name for this. Each of these things is width 200, height 150, it looks like. So can we do, trying to decide if I want to have this layout controller be in control of the width and height of these actual boxes. And I don't think I do. I want them to be independently controlled, but positionally laid out. That's not what I wanted. That's what I wanted. Okay. And the reason for that is that I'm going to want to delete these, but I want their positions to remain the same. So, because we might have 2 panels, not 4. So we want child alignment to be upper left is fine. And if we delete 1, right now they're evenly spacing each other. Why are they evenly spacing each other? Shouldn't they stack up? Why are they not stacking up? That makes them all connect. But if I delete 1, instead of being like 3 lined up, they're spacing. That's a setting on the unit status somewhere. There we go. Force expand. That was the problem. Okay, so now if we add 1, it just tacks to the bottom. Otherwise, yeah. Cool. And if we had control their height, then they would do weird things. So, okay. That all seems good. That's working as I think it should. Now, do we want to have all 4 of these panels alive, but just toggle them on and off? Or do we want to generate them at runtime? I think I want to generate them at runtime. I think this is the better approach. Shouldn't take too long to do that little bit of extra legwork. So we want to make this panel an prefab, and we want to generate a number of panels based off of the units we have in our team. I do think we're going to need to have some differentiation between whose status bars are whose. Hello, sir, to you. Welcome to the stream, Nathan. Hope you're having a good morning or afternoon or whatever time it is. Hope it's good. We're just doing some general coding. Trying to get some status bars showing up for our player characters. Yeah, I'm going to want to subdivide this box into the hero versus the companion. Although I do think I want it as one box, because I do want to tie them together. But there needs to be some way to distinguish who's who. And I know how. We're going to shrink these images down a bit so that their width isn't quite as large. Let's anchor them to this side, I guess. That didn't work the way I thought it would. Pivot 1. Okay, and then this text is embedded as well. Let's move it to the side, I guess. Let's change the text to be right aligned. Like so. Okay, cool. And then the image will pull the progress bar in a bit. It doesn't need to be as long. Then we'll delete the other ones because we can just duplicate now. Move it down a bit. Duplicate both of them. Move them down a bit. And then we will add an image to the left. Change the sprite editing mode. Let's try 75 width and 50 height. 50-50. Like so. And then copy and paste that again. Like so. Okay, and then we can go back and we can move these progress bars back out a bit. Probably 115 it looks like. That's pretty reasonable, I think. So we'll have the face of the companion, the face of the hero. We probably want to do some alignment on this as well. So we're going to want to create an empty object. It's going to be prefabs within prefabs, I think. There's going to be status, and the status will be the portrait of the character, and then there will be a SP bar, and there will be an HP bar. So we have an SP bar, an HP bar, and a portrait, which we're going to put all under status. And then status, actually we're going to take it all out again for a second. And we're going to try and line up, which ones is this? This is the bottom section. We're going to try and line up the status to be about the same dimension as this information. Like so. Then we're going to add it back in. And everything should be relatively nicely aligned to that box. Okay. Now, we're going to add another vertical layout here. So this internal box will have a vertical layout. Because again, we may not always have a two hero companion situation. We might have a situation where there's only the hero, and so we might want to not have both of them. So we need to have this thing support that. So again, I think we want to turn off force expand. And then we want to add a bit of spacing this time. So we're going to add some spacing 15 to the left, it looks like. Probably 15 from the top. And then we're going to add some spacing between the objects. 15? That looks about right to me. Okay, just fixing it to not be off screen. I noticed that it was just slightly over. So now the unit status bar is here. Then we have the panel, which is the units. And then underneath the units are... This is a unit, I guess. And then that unit... Unit pair. Okay. Then we have the unit pair, and the unit pair has two statuses under it. Although it could just have one and it still works. So we can load up one or two statuses for a unit. Okay. Seems fairly reasonable. So we're going to want to make a unit pair as a prefab, and we're going to want to make a status as a prefab. And then we're going to want to load a number of unit pairs for each unit pair we have. And then we're going to want to load a number of statuses for the number of characters we have. Reasonable, reasonable. Coming along, making progress. This is actually looking like something finally. Okay, so then this is the portrait. Before I start prefabbing this up, I do want to fix up these things to have proper names. So this is SP text. This will be HP text. This is something I can do after it's a prefab as well, but I just feel like doing it first. These progress bars are not progress bars. Where we used to have the character info panel, this used to be how we showed the information before. And in here, we had real progress bars, not just an image. We had the ATP, fill, frame. Okay, so there was two values, these two. They're both just images. And the fill amount would just be like that. And the frame was a sliced basic texture without filling in the center. Okay, I think the easiest way is going to be to grab these, paste them into here. I don't think the text and the bar should be embedded in each other. They should be floating outside, I think. And now for the HP bar, this will be the fill. So we'll copy component, HP bar, paste values. Now it has a green bar. And then we'll copy that HP bar. And we will make this the HP fill or frame. And then the frame will copy the component and paste the component. Okay. So that's a little too small. So we can kind of narrow that frame a little bit. These do feel a little bit small-ish now. We do want the bar to match the frame. So the bar will go underneath and it will go to stretch mode and it will stretch to match this thing exactly. Does it need to go the other way? It does. And it needs to go the other way because this one needs to render on top. So the frame will match the bar exactly. It's actually incorrect. There's a small inconsistency here that I'm not going to worry about at this time, but you'll notice that when this thing is at like 9.8, it actually looks full when it's not, and that's because the bar still has a couple more pixels to go before it fills in all the way. So really the bar... maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe I'll fix it now. We really want the bar to go to here to here. So this actual end and beginning is within the frame. The reason I'm trying to stack them on top of each other, though, is that I want them to stretch together. So I think the way that I do that is like that. Now, that didn't fix it. Now, as I move them, it works. Okay, there we go. I was just clicking on the wrong one at first. Okay, so now I have this object. I can move this progress bar and scale it. If I want to try and make it a little bit bigger, I could try and do that. Which, I don't want to cut off the bottom of the P. Could we go lower? If we give it a height of 15, is that a little bit more readable? It's actually a lot more readable. Okay. We'll go with that. And then we'll copy and paste this now that we've done all this work to make it. And we'll have this thing, copy component, the position of the old one, and we'll paste it values. Okay, and we'll get rid of the old SP bar. And then we want to make this thing height 15. We messed that up somehow. Okay. Better. Good. Okay, and then we rename this to SP bar. We rename this to SP bar frame. Then we get rid of these objects because we are only using them as reference, and we can get rid of this one. And now I think we have this set up. The only thing I'll do here is I'll change this bar to instead be green to be a bluish color to represent SP. Let's pro skills. Let's pro skills it up. Properties. There we go. File, save as. Hero icon. Cool. Companion icon. Oh no. Oh no, I've saved over it. Alright, well. File, save as. Companion icon. And then we do this one more time. Undo, text, H, capital H. File, save as. Hero icon. Cool. And now we can give this thing a portrait. Sweet. I think it's time to prefab this up. So let's make a status prefab. Then let's delete the status and make a unit pair prefab. Let's make them addressable. Let's have this be the unit pair. UI. I need to come up. I think it should be at the front. I feel like I want some sort of naming scheme for my addressables, and I haven't come up with it yet. So we keep just adding new and new names. But I do think I want to distinguish that this is a UI object. Okay. So now, the idea would be when we get into a game, we will run some logic that will generate a unit pair for each of the units that are in the game. And then for each of those pairs, we will generate a status. Like so. And then we will update the HP and SP of those units, and we'll figure out how to hook all that stuff up. I think we had some of that already figured out in the old character info panel. We might use some of that code, or we might build it from scratch. Cool. Actually, I am hungry. How are we doing? I think I'm going to take a food break. I want to keep going. I want to get this hooked up today. I want to have it so these statuses are actually updating and showing the stats of the characters. I also want to hook it up so that we have colored text showing the enemy's name when they're selected for an attack, and the color of that text will indicate the current percentage of health remaining. So like 75% and up will be a green name above them, and then yellow will be 50% and up, and then red will be 0% and up, or something along those lines. Yeah, I want to get all that working today. But I'm going to stop. I'm going to make some lunch. I'm going to eat. I'll be back in about half an hour. That's where I'm going to stop this stream. For now, this is going to be Tolhi signing out. Later, guys.